Hi everyone, this is a very short clip to talk you through the Year 12 Bridging Pack on Changing Places. The textbook that we're going to be using for the Changing Places module is this one here. It's the Cambridge University Press Geography A Level textbook. Now I've got an e-version of it here, so if I just open it up. And these are the contents of the textbook for this section. So the nature and importance of place, we look at changing places, the relationships between places, the meaning of places, we look at some place studies. I really like this module. It's actually my favourite module, and it's like no geography that you've ever done before. It's about how places really affect you. And I think if you really think about it, everywhere you go to has an effect on you as a person, and it makes you feel a particular way. And changing places is quite a conceptual module, but it's about thinking on a different level. I really love this module. It's my favourite one in the Year 12. And I've put together this bridging pack for you to try and introduce you to some of the ideas. So the first question looks at this graph to the right, and this graph shows your attachment to a place and your intensity of experience there. Now, generally, if you've had a very intense experience in a particular place, you've got quite a large attachment, a great attachment to that place. It could be like a football stadium, maybe that you feel very strongly about your team, and therefore when you visit that football stadium, you feel really attached to that place. And it could be a place that you don't go to very often, but because you have a really good experience there, actually you feel quite attached to that place, even though your experience of it is actually quite limited. And that can change as we grow up, as you can see here with part B. Our sense of place really changes as we grow up, because what's important to you as a kid is not necessarily what's important to you as an adult. 2 looks at the geographer Edward Ralph. Now, he looked at insider and outsider perspectives, and this is really about how you feel when you're in a place. Do you feel like you belong in that place? Do you know things about that place? If I think, for example, about my home, I know when the bins are collected. I know what the neighbour next door does. The retired couple across the road, I know what they used to do. I know the kids that are around and about. There aren't any buses around here, but I know where to get a bus from locally. I know where the good walks are. I'm an insider. An outsider might not know the things that are unwritten, the little rules about the place that nobody ever really speaks about, but everybody really understands. And actually, you can be an insider somewhere and turn into an outsider, or vice versa. So, for example, if you think about somebody who may fall upon hard times and become homeless, they might become like an outsider in that community. Or maybe a person who becomes elderly and they can't really get out, they're just viewing the world through their window. They might actually feel like an outsider because they're not part of that community anymore. The next section is looking at public and private spaces. There are very few true public spaces if you think about it. Anywhere that's out in the open that you can access all the time, that would probably be a public space, as long as it's not somebody's property. A private space is more difficult to see. If you look at this shopping mall here, you might think, well, that's a public space, I can go there. But actually, you can't go there all the time. You can't go there when it's closed. And when you do go there are rules to follow. There'll be security cameras, there might be security guards, and you're going to have to do what you're told in that space, which is gives us a key idea that it's actually a private space, not a public one. Next one's great, topophobia and topophilia, words that you've probably never come across before. You must have been to a place that's made you feel ever so slightly on edge, or a place that you really love going to. And this is topophobia and topophilia. Phobia is fear, isn't it? So topophobia, well, some people are scared of haunted houses. Some people are scared of things that look a bit spooky. Some people would love that. So topophobia and topophilia are quite personal to you, really. So I've asked you to find some images of what you feel topophobia is and what you feel topophilia is. And actually, the places that you choose might be different to the places that your friends or your family might choose. And again, your perceptions of those can change over time as well. You know, if you've loved a place but you've had a bad experience there, that can suddenly become a place that you fear. Frictional affective distance is an interesting one. It sort of says really that if you've got somewhere that's close to you, you're more likely to interact with it more. So the places around your locality, you will visit more than the places that are further away. And that makes sense, doesn't it? Because they're closer and you can get to them more. But then there's an opposing theory in geography as well, this is time-space convergence. And time-space convergence is one that suggests that as places are becoming globalised and we've got the internet and we've got really good transport links, actually two locations that are really far apart can suddenly seem really close together. So these two are contradictory terms. The frictional effect is fine when you don't take into account globalization or technology, but actually time-space convergence is happening where we're becoming a much more globalized world and places are feeling quite close together. Number 6, rural areas of countryside and urban areas of the city. And the rural-urban continuum basically shows how there's no cut-off point between there's the countryside and there's the city. It's kind of like a line that goes between. And you might think of a place that you can think of, it's not really the countryside or the city, it sort of fits on that continuum in between. And actually people often think that it moves from rural to urban and that's it just moves one way. As places become more built up, they become more urban. But actually, if you think about it, the opposite can happen really. If an urban area becomes neglected or derelict in any way, then the plants are going to soon start to grow there. And actually the countryside takes back over again. So think about places where there's been natural disasters or places that have just been abandoned because they're too remote. Actually the countryside takes over again. So the rural-urban continuum is that line, but actually places can move along it. Number 7. Okay, number 7, you'll be able to think of loads of examples for this, and I'll pick a really obvious one. The song New York by Alicia, and I've put a link there for you to listen to it. She perceives New York as a particular place. And in this module in geography, we look at how people perceive places and how they represent them through music and songs and all kinds of things. So that's just asking you to listen to those lyrics and work out how and why she perceives that place as it is. And then this is an article from the Guardian newspaper here. And it's these really cool postcards that this artist has been making, where, just move that down a little bit. They take like a funny slant, I suppose, on different places. So York, death by heritage. So they're saying, York, there's just too much heritage there. They've gone a bit over the top with it. And they are people's perceptions. They're all very biased, but these are the kinds of sources that you can talk about in this bit of the module and really explore the way that people perceive places and how they represent them and whether or not that's fair and realistic. And I've put you on here a TED talk as well. You can have a listen to. Detroit is one of the case studies we use. Really interesting place, actually, Detroit is, because it's a place that was really popular and very profitable and has gone downhill in America. So we will look at Detroit at some point in the module. Little map, a few facts, information about it, that sort of thing would be great. Maybe a timeline if you can. And then we're thinking about place manipulation. And place manipulation happens in most places. When you visit somewhere, there will be, even the artwork on the walls is designed to make you think about things in a particular way. And the school is a really good example of this. If you think about the posters that you see around a school, they're often motivational, they've got big words, subliminal messages that you don't necessarily read, but because they're there, they kind of get into your head without you realising. And so I want you to think about a place where it manipulates your attitudes or feelings for that one place. For this last question, I want you to think about place studies. In this module, we will be looking at 2 different places. We've got to do one that's close to home, we've got to do one that's a bit further away. And they should be contrasting places. And it explains here a little bit about them. And often the 20-mark questions in the changing places section, more often than not, are on the place studies. So you've got to gather together some information about your local area and a place that's further away. And then in the course, we'll actually tell you what those places are. So don't do too much on this now, but perhaps just be having a think about it. This is a brilliant case study here of Birmingham, and it's been created using the ArcGIS story maps. And if you have a look at that, it will give you an idea about how to do place studies, and perhaps you'll have some ideas of your own. You could even try making an Esri story map of a place that you know in advance of this. That's a really very quick overview of the Changing Places module, but I think this is a really enjoyable one, and hopefully you'll really like it.